There's a movie which is about a combination of meteorological factors which go together to produce the perfect storm. And the perfect storm is what is affecting the tobacco industry in terms of legislation. There are a number of different factors which are acting against it. These are price, smoking bans, pack warnings, display bans, even now flavour bans, and possibly even branding bans, which is the FMCG nightmare. So what is driving this? The answer is the FCTC, the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. Now, that is a piece of legislation, global legislation. It's been ratified by 171 countries, and those 171 countries account for about 95% of the tobacco population, the smoking population. Precepts of the FCT, they include price, they include smoking bans, and they include flavours. Let's take them one at a time. Price. Why do they think that is such an effective way of reducing smoking? The answer is a simple ratio, which means that for every 10% you increase cigarette prices, the demand for cigarettes goes down by 4%. And obviously we're seeing legislation increasing prices through tax increases every year in pretty well every country. Now, it's not quite that simple because other factors are involved also when you increase prices. For example, if you increase price, you might draw in illicit trade. So therefore, people won't actually be smoking less, they'll be just smoking duty-paid cigarettes less. Another factor might be that cigarette just smoking cultures vary from country to country. So in some places, they're going to just plain ignore increases and even ignore bans. Other places, they take them on board. Do smoking bans work? Yes, they do. We understand that in the US states where there are comprehensive smoking bans, actual per capita consumption is between 5% and 20% lower than in those states where there aren't comprehensive smoking bans. At the moment, we're having some big changes in terms of legislation. We've got a number of what we might call battlegrounds at the moment. One of these is to do with one of the next stages of legislation in tobacco control, and that is point of sale bans. Now, point of sale is one of the last bastions of advertising for the tobacco industry. Pretty well everything else in many places has been banned. So it's very important. Another new kind of ban, it's one that the FCTC favours, is a flavour ban. The reason for that is that tobacco control groups feel that if you flavour cigarettes and if those flavours are like candy, like sweets, it might encourage children to smoke. So in the US, the FDA, which administrates tobacco now in the US, banned candy flavours on tobacco. But this being the tobacco industry, things are not so simple because they didn't ban menthol, which is actually the most popular flavour in tobacco. So, however, they did, for example, ban cloves, and cloves make a kind of cigarette called a kretek, which is the most popular cigarette in Indonesia, and there was a level of export from Indonesia to the US, and therefore Indonesia is complaining to the WTO about the ban being against the principles of trade. There are other ramifications of the flavour ban too. It's something of a Pandora's box, in fact. Once you open it, all sorts of things come out. For example, there's now a fear in the industry, which personally I would not have believed a year ago, that there might even be a ban on burley tobacco as a result of flavour bans. Now, burley tobacco is one of the two most important types of tobacco in the world. The reason that there's a fear that burley might be banned is that in the making of that tobacco, in the process of it, some flavourings are used to alleviate the harshness of the blend. That's traditional with that kind of tobacco. But obviously, if there was a ban on that, that would be absolutely massive for the industry. Another battleground to come is plain packs. Now, if you take away the branding on a pack, you're taking away the basis of a product. However, there is legislation in place in one country, and that is Australia, to actually have plain tobacco packs, plain cigarette packs, and that is by 2012. So there would be no colours, no markings, except for the graphic warning, the graphic health warning on the pack. Nothing else. This is an issue that would actually lead to the mother of all, will actually probably lead to the mother of all battles in legal terms, because this is something the tobacco industry would certainly fight tooth and nail. And so we've already heard sort of warning shots in this direction, which are concerning the expropriation of corporate assets by taking away the branding. The anti-smoking lobby would like to have legislation which just plain bans tobacco. There was actually a bill in Finland which and reports of that bill were that it was going to do just that and ban tobacco. In fact, it didn't happen. It didn't turn out to be as draconian as that. But that is what the anti-smoking lobbies would like. They would like the FDA in the US to just say tobacco is a dangerous drug and we're going to ban it. But the one thing that the FDA can't do in its administration of cigarettes is to actually ban the sale of cigarettes. What do we have in the future? We're going to have more bans. The bans are going to move, in some cases, outdoors. They're going to move maybe even into private houses. We're having calls for that. Cars, because children travel in cars. These are all possible. We're going to have more restrictions. For definite. We're going to have certainly more display bans, and we're going to have some major battles concerning plain packaging. So do we have a perfect storm yet? Not quite, but we can certainly say that the waves are rising.